One of the themes that we're hearing from customer service leaders is that there's a lot of energy around AI, lots of energy, but maybe a lot less clarity about how it actually gets funded. So hence, that's why today's topic, why your AI roadmap is backwards and what your leaders should do to prioritize instead. So we are joined by Lisa, who spent a lot of time helping folks move from AI experimentation into real world projects. They've got a really measurable impact. She's helps them make this transition from strategy all the way through to implementation. She's got 20 years of experience and scar tissue to show for it. So she had leadership roles at both at DigitalOcean and AppNexus. She's been through multiple successful exits, so been on both sides of it. And I think what's really nice about today is you're going to hear about this kind of very practitioner lens on AI adoption. What stalls, what works, and I think the key is kind of like the sequencing of what works. So that's kind of the thing we want to be listening for. And again, everyone said she should be a familiar face. She's a longtime member of the Brain Trust. So welcome, Lisa.
Thank
Um,
you.
so let's talk about that topic. Why is the AI roadmap backwards, and how do you figure it out? It's a great kick the hornet's nest kind of topic. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so what I'm seeing is that there's certainly a lot of noise out there in terms of AI, and part of that is coming from the technology vendors themselves. So, what I'm seeing in some teams that I work with is the temptation to lead with the technology, not the business problem. So, when they do make a case, a business case for AI, it's more around sort of the shiny object and less around the actual problem and the impact of solving it. But the thing is, executives don't fund shiny, they fund important. So as a result, at organizations that maybe they want to do AI based on sort of this way of thinking about it, AI ends up feeling optional, not essential.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point, right? Yeah, you mentioned important. You said shiny. I would call it interesting, right? Important is much more, it takes precedence over kind of what's interesting. When I talk to people about kind of what they think is interesting is efficiency. We hear a lot about efficiency. AI is going to save me time. It's going to reduce the workload. But I'm guessing you're going to tell us that that's maybe not the way you want to go in terms of a business case and justifying this.
Well, I love efficiency. I mean, we all love efficiency. I think and certainly I am a strong advocate for teams introducing AI to drive efficiency for their teams. But when it comes to big AI investments, which was sort of what I'm talking about today, I think efficiency often efficiency itself uses the wrong currency. So what I mean by that is what is efficiency? It's hours saved. It doesn't map to metrics cleanly. Unless you're talking about cutting headcount, if you are talking about cutting headcount, that's fine. That's not the scope of what I'm going to talk about today. So if it's one of those situations where you don't want to cut headcount, but you're getting more efficient, what is the benefit to the business? And I think what I'd recommend is the benefit to the business is more around revenue protection and growth. I think those are stronger arguments. Um, and that's where I would start. So stop leading with AI and start leading with revenue dollars.
Great. So point number one, important over interesting. Point number two, let's start talking about, it sounds like outcomes, right? Dollar said outcomes. The next question is going to come down the pipeline, though. It's like, I got this great idea. I've got these outcomes. When you take this business case that we've got to use to kind of justify this, a lot of times the executives say, show me, prove to me. How do you
Right.
actually prove these business cases when you don't actually have the data because you're in this brand new world?
Right. And it's funny because the last talk I gave 2 years ago was about business case creations for, the customer service and success audience. And I effectively had the same message. Now it's just sort of tweaked to focus on AI. Um, but, the basics are still the same. So the first thing is don't be discouraged because you don't have the data. Um, there's ways to get the data, which I'll talk about in a minute, but also don't start with the full platform investment. So you really do need pretty good data before you're trying to make a business case to get a big investment. So don't be discouraged, but don't overreach either. So what you can do is start with one workflow using existing AI tools. I think pretty much every company has some sort of AI tools. If you don't, then that's a separate conversation. Um, and start with leading indicators. So as an example, you're not going to get revenue right off the bat, but what you can get by doing a pilot, with some existing tools is maybe some customer health score trends or something that's indicative of, if we were to expand this and do it over a longer term and with more people, it will start to hit the top line. And once you started seeing that leading indicator data come in, either make the business case to scale it, um, or maybe you see the leading indicator isn't moving and then you kill it, or you have some learnings and you need to adjust it before you're ready to scale. Um, I have a framework for this that I'll share after the session, but the message here is prove the use case before you make the business case to scale it.
So it sounds like you don't have to have the massive, huge business case, but it's like I think the words that it's like, is there a kernel there? Is there something there, to start with, and can I prove something out of this, and then potentially take it bigger and bigger from there once I've kind of learned some of the so that to me is the big thing. It's like there's so much around certainty, right? And today's world, there's not a lot of certainty, and so a business case is like this perfect, it's exactly pristine and 100%. But you're telling me, don't wait for the 100%. You can start small and build out from there.
That's right. Have a reason to think your investment will be successful, and only ask for investment that's in proportion to your certainty. So with small certainty, small business case; with large certainty, larger business case.
Bigger business case. I mean,
Yeah.
that's got to be the case. That's kind of like the general approach. Question though is, and I'm sure that the people are going to ask the same question. It's like, okay, that's theory. That makes a ton of sense. They're logical. Do you have like a
Mm-hmm.
specific example? Can you share us with something like, here's how I started in this
Yeah.
this this
It's
approach?
it's funny, I have a number of them, and I saw someone from the chat specifically mention the churn use case. So I'm going to use a churn example. So I was working with a CS team that was managing churn. Well, they just had churn issues in their metrics, and they were, managing it quite reactively. Sort of uh, when a customer didn't renew, they tried to get them back. And they had, my client had been to some sort of conference, and they had been sold an AI platform to solve for this. I'm not going to mention which one, that's not important. And my advice, instead of sort of starting with this, and they had the basics. They had, they already had a customer success management tool. So it's not that they didn't have anything to start with. So my advice was to start with one workflow. In their case, we started with product usage. They decided that was sort of what they thought one of the biggest leading indicators of churn. And we used their existing AI tooling to start monitoring the product usage proactively. Um, but we also didn't fully dedicate the process at all to AI. The CSM still made the call on, what the line was for when the dip in product usage sort of merited intervention and what types of interventions to do. And some of those were already automated. Some of them we started to automate. Others just still needed a human touch. So it was really a combination of the AI and the operations and the people, which I think is always the right combination. And sort of based on just this test, focusing on product usage, they were able to start identifying the risk earlier. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of leading indicators. So we still didn't know if this was going to ultimately impact churn, but based on doing this small test with a subset of the CSMs, I was able to help them go to leadership with a stronger and a smaller business case. And they went forward without, instead of asking for that big platform up front, they started off just asking to expand the pilot. And they still might need this big platform, right? If they need, if it turns out it's not as simple as just product usage and there's like 10 different signals and all these different complex interrelations, it's not to say they won't need it, but they're already seeing traction just based on this smaller test. So sort of see what you can do with that before you ask for the bigger investment.
So I think that the term that you would use is like anybody can ask for budget, right? Everyone comes to ask for budget, but I think that management, what I'm hearing is like you're asking, you're trying to earn the right to ask for budget. Is that a good way of describing it? It's like management's like, okay, you're trying, you're not bringing me everything, you're trying to show me some information, so you're trying to earn the right to actually go and ask
Yeah.
for what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Uh,
If if there's one thing, if there's, I mean, we've got people here, we're getting close to time, but if there's one thing that you would tell everybody here in terms of, what would you do? What's your here's your North Star. Do this one thing.
right. Well, to bring it back to my talk 2 years ago, it's still the same shift. So uh, back then it was probably stop, complaining about your team being overworked and start with the business problem. Now it's a small reframe. Stop leading with AI and start with the business problem. And sort of the sub bullet to that is thinking thinking progress, not perfection. I think a lot of people get intimidated when you're thinking about solving a business problem, but think about one workflow, prove it, and then make the case to scale it. And if you want a starting point, I know we've only talked a few minutes. I'll be sharing an investment framework after the session that maps case requirements based on maturity. It could be a helpful reference for structuring those conversations with leadership. So you have a way to think it through.
So what I'm hearing, I'm just kind of summarizing, it's like number one, start with the business problem, don't start with the technology. Number two, start small. I love the idea of progress versus perfection. I think that's a very useful thing. We do get hung up on the perfection. And number three, take that information back to management. Now you've got a chance of selling a case.
Yeah,
Any
that's right.
major things you want to stay away from?
Well, again, I would be as rooted in facts as possible and stay away from the hype. So, yes, there's some companies where just using the AI word resonates, and for those companies, you should use it. But my sense is as we get further into 2026, we were started talking about Q2 before, uh, AI for AI's sake is no longer going to cut it. So sort of don't drop the hype, focus on the facts.
So as I hear those words, I had this conversation yesterday morning with someone who took them 6 months to go through the learning experience of what you laid out in the last 12 minutes. So thank you very much. I think that's exactly right. Start small, start with the business, start small, and then progress from there. Hey, Paul, I think we're kind of at our point in time. I did want to go and open it up to the group. I've been asking questions, but are there other groups, other people in the chat asking questions? I'm not seeing any at this point, but this would be a fabulous time to come in and jump in and get me out of the chair and you into the chair. So anything else that the group wants to ask of Lisa at this point?
Lisa, as you were talking, because I facilitate these types of meetings across the executive suite all the time, you kind of hit on this at the end, but I did want to ask this as people are thinking maybe if they have any questions to put in the chat or we can highlight you. Um, I think initially what I am hearing a lot from product leaders and from just leadership across the board is a top-down push. Use AI. I love how you're framing it as, well, that is just a tool. But I'm curious how many of you out there are experiencing that exact same thing. Like, hey, we need to use AI. You have to use AI, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you do in that kind of a top down? I mean, I feel like the obvious answer is stick with what you were saying, which is build the outcome first, and then AI becomes the tool to the outcome. But I was just curious if you had any other thoughts there.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I framed this around the orientation that like you're the one who's excited about AI and want to bring it upward, but you're right. There's also that very common scenario where the leadership is, talking about the shiny AI and they're forcing it down on you. And you have to manage their expectations. I think taking the same approach is still right. It's not what you're trying to solve for isn't business case necessarily. It's more they could be the ones who bring you, hey, we heard about this new platform that's going to solve all our problems. Can you implement it? And you can come back with, well, here's what our problem actually is, very similar to, how we talked through. Um, Hopefully you already have this in flight, but, and here's how we're thinking of phasing it and the tooling we're going to use. And we actually don't think we need this tool right away. If we do this test and we don't, see the leading indicators that we're thinking, then, we'll certainly consider it. But, I think helping reframe excitement from any place, either your own or executive excitement, into smaller steps, proving before investing.
Brilliant, brilliant. Paul, we got time for one other quick question from the chat. Many applications for AI which require upfront effort and cost to train and build. What do the best business case looks like to get the initial investment approved? Sounds like it's the same thing. Start small, be very specific.
Yeah, that's right. Julia, that's another reason I didn't mention, but you're right. The issue, even for platforms that, maybe they offer a trial period or something like that, your time is not free. So make sure you actually understand what your needs and your goals are before you're taking the time to invest in this type of thing. And when I'm talking about business case here, I'm not just talking about what the outcomes, or when we think about cost, I'm not just talking about how much the systems cost. I'm also talking about exactly this, the time and energy to build them out and have the team change how they work over to these new systems. And that investment should only be made once you have some more certainty.
Sounds like a plan.
Excellent.
Lisa, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We're going to have that framework of yours. We'll publish that, get that and make that available to folks. She's probably got her LinkedIn profile on there as well, so feel free to reach out